All right, campers. Example 2, we're going to list every angle that's a multiple of 30 degrees or 45 degrees in degrees and in radians. So this here is basically just the unit circle, and we're just going to label all these angles around in degrees and radians, because these are the ones that are going to be used most often. Especially in this class and in calculus, like you don't usually use 101 degrees. It's usually a multiple of 30 or 45. When you get into physics or the sciences, then yeah, they'll be using degrees, but in those cases, you don't really have to convert. Okay, so on the circle from your trig class, you should know, we start over here on the far right side, and that would be 0 degrees. And then also 0 radians. All right, next one up. So we're going to go counterclockwise. So this would be 30 degrees, which is pi over 6. 45 degrees, that's pi over 4. And then 60 degrees, or pi over 3. And then this point way up here, that's going straight up, and it's making a 90-degree angle with 0, or the x-axis. So 90 degrees and pi over 2. Okay, moving into quadrant 2, the next one is 120 degrees, or 2 pi over 3. The next one after that is 135, which is 3 pi over 4 radians. Next one is 150 degrees, and that is 5 pi over 6. And then straight out here on the left, we've rotated around in like half a circle. So that's 180 degrees, or just pi. So the rest of them are going to be somewhat similar. So I'll leave that to you guys to kind of fill those in. You can look at the key for the notes, but I'll leave that to you to fill those in. The thing about these is you need to know what they are. I've had several students when they get into this class and they have not yet memorized that like 60 degrees is pi over 3 radians. And what that does is it takes time away from other problems. So you're going to be expected to know how to convert these things instantaneously. Like yes, there are conversion factors, but you can't get stuck on those because you're just going to be wasting time. So if you have not memorized these yet, you're going to want to. Now you could argue, well, this is an online class, so I could just look them up. That is true. But once you get into a face-to-face mode, especially in calculus, it's expected that you know these, and you're not going to be able to just look them up while I take the exam or the quiz. So if you haven't memorized them yet, I would strongly encourage you to do so, because it's just going to help you out in the long run. All right. So from here, we're going to start to evaluate the trig functions of these angles that are listed above us. So pretty big milestone for trig students, and to be able to do so without a calculator. I know a lot of high schools now are just like, here's a calculator, plug them in. Well, in college, you're expected to know how to use it without one. So one method that students like to use is by using the unit circle definitions, which we'll go ahead and define in this box. So P is the point xy that's on the unit circle that corresponds to the angle theta. And it doesn't matter where we put it, we just got to put it somewhere. So traditionally it's just in the first quadrant, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so it's the unit circle though. It does matter that the radius is 1. And then this angle right here, that's going to be theta. So going off of the unit circle, the definitions for your trig functions are as follows. Sine of theta is equal to the y coordinate cosine of theta is going to equal the x-coordinate. And then tangent of theta is going to equal y over x. So these are the three trig functions that are usually taught in geometry. And then when you get into trig, your whole world is destroyed because you learn that there's three other ones that they never taught you in geometry. So the other three, cosecant, CSC of theta, and that is 1 over y. Number 5 would be secant of theta, and that's 1 over x. And then the last function is cotangent, and that will be x over y. So these definitions here, they allow you to calculate the trig function of an angle just by using the coordinate on the unit circle. All right, so on the next page, there's another unit circle like this with the angles as well as coordinates, like specific coordinates listed out that go with the common angles that you're expected to know. So let's go ahead and look at that. If I can actually turn the page. All right. So if you hadn't filled out that unit circle on the previous page, you could just kind of look at this too. It does the same thing. So each one of these angles has its own special point that goes with it. And from these coordinates, we can evaluate those trig functions using the coordinates and the definitions that we just went over. So let's see how that works. And this is only one of the ways to do it. So we're going to go over this, and then I'll show you a second way to do it. And it's up to you to figure out what you want to do. I'm not going to tell you to use one method versus another. I am going to tell you, though, you can't use a calculator. All right. So sine of 30 degrees. Well, sine of 30 degrees, sine, that goes with the y-coordinate. So all you have to do is on your circle, there's 30 degrees. You look at the y, excuse me, the y-coordinate of the point, which is a half. And that's it. That's all you have to do. Cosine of 210, you look on your circle, there's 210. And cosine is the x-coordinate. So the x-coordinate is a negative root 3 over 2. And that's your answer. Now, when you get into the other ones, like tangent, that one's a little bit trickier. Not a whole lot, but a little trickier. So there's your 5 pi over 3. Here's your full point. So tangent, remember, is y over x. So just take your y-coordinate, stick it over the x-coordinate, and never ever leave it like this. You got to reduce it, so like the 2's cancel out. So you end up with negative root 3. All right, secant of pi over 2. So pi over 2, that's the one that goes straight up, or 1/2 pi, same thing. So secant was, if you remember, 1 over x. So in this case, your x-coordinate is a 0. So we have 1 over 0, which, ladies and gentlemen, is not 0. That is undefined or does not exist. Okay, so that's how you use it. The tricky part about this method is you have to know the points. So you got to figure out, basically memorize them, and then purely go off of memory on the entire circle. Now there's tricks to look at and to figure out like which coordinate is what. So like for example, if you look at the y coordinates, they increase, so they go 1, 2, 3, and then you can pretend there's like square roots on all of them, but the square root of 1 is 1. And then the x coordinate, it reverses itself, 3, 2, 1. And then on the other side, it just kind of flips and goes backwards. So you can use that. There's other ways to do it too. So you can look up ways or use whatever you want if you're going to use this method. Now another one, which we'll go over in the next videos, to not use the circle, but instead use triangles and SOHCAHTOA.